guys from CD Projekt Red approached me and asked me to be a part of their new project, Cyberpunk 2077.
Cyberpunk, even with all its flaws, had an amazing setting, and I'm super glad we get to explore more of it here with Edgerunner. It is so good.
And the anime award goes to
Cyberpunk Edgerunners.
It's the end of the line for me, but not for you.
Edgerunners has officially come out a year ago this month, and it still feels like it was the other day. Along with it being Edgerunner's release anniversary this month, the game itself is finally releasing a DLC which was promised within months of launch. But that isn't even unusual for game companies anymore. At the time of writing this, the DLC isn't out just yet, but it's promised to overhaul the whole game. So you guys might already know if it's true or just another lie from CD Projekt Red. Of course, there's no way I can talk about Edgerunners without mentioning Cyberpunk 2077. So I thought that right now would be the perfect time to delve into what legacy CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk franchise left behind. We all know that the game itself released broken at launch, and mass refunds went underway. I also decided to refund the game, but only until I bought my PC so I can play the game in its best state possible. As cringe as it sounds, this game was one of the many reasons I bought a PC. Eventually I played through it within a month or so after launch. And honestly, the game was great, but not amazing, which I already expected as they hyped up the game to insane proportions. And that wasn't only the studio's fault, but the fans too. The best way to play the game in my opinion was to mainly focus on the main story and a few side quests, because the second you delve into the open world, and the smaller side quests, you'd see where they skimped out to get the game out on time. Which wasn't fully their fault. If I recall correctly, the investors were getting impatient with them delaying it so much, and that included some fans too. Unfortunately, it was infamous for running very poorly on last gen, which is where the main problem stemmed from, as on release day you could only play the last gen version on PS5 and Xbox Series X, which was only more broken and unpolished than its unreleased next gen version. Since then, Projekt Red has been fixing and polishing the game, finally releasing the next gen version of the game in mid-February 2022, in perfect time for Edgerunners to drop later that year on September 13th. This was perfectly timed. People would watch the show, cry themselves to sleep afterwards, and the next day they would buy or re-download the game to take their anger out on Adam Smasher or drive around listening to the now iconic music from Edgerunners. In turn playing the improved version of the game and only amplifying their experience. Not to mention nearly all of the locations in the show were actually in the game and you could go and visit them whenever you pleased. Projekt Red then also decided to add little nods to the game itself by adding the music from the show to the game's radio stations, Becca's shotgun that you can find on the map, David's jacket, and a drink named after David, which only made people want to play the game even more. I still remember booting up the game for the first time in ages after finishing the show and actually hearing the song from the show in the game, while I went around visiting all the show's locations. It was truly breathtaking. This really lengthened the hype around the show and it elevated it as people would binge watch the show then play the game. You can really see the difference it made if you compare Edgerunners to Arcane. Arcane on its own was an amazing show, but if you wanted to play League of Legends afterwards, you wouldn't really get the same experience between them as with Cyberpunk. In the Cyberpunk game, you could legit just play exactly like David or Lucy or Maine from the show. This really carried the hype for a while, with memes cropping up with sad Keanu Reeves. And while we're on topic of Keanu, him being part of the game really elevated the hype too, as he was seen as the wholesome actor who everyone loved back then, and still do, resulting in the classic "you're breathtaking" meme. After the anime came out, it completely revived the game and allowed the game a second chance, which didn't go unnoticed as people were not only loving the game but the Cyberpunk universe as a whole, me included. Coming back to the show, Studio Trigger really went all out on the animation and story. They were so passionate about the project, even at one point were arguing with Projekt Red over the existence of Rebecca in the show. But Studio Trigger insisted that the, and I quote, "lolly must stay." Eventually Projekt Red saw the design of Rebecca and her purpose. We kind of understand now why they wanted to keep her in so badly, as her death in the show was a massive gut punch and very unexpected. The pacing of the show itself was great, nothing felt like it was dragged out for too long. In fact, in my opinion, some parts were too fast paced, like the episode where David joins Maine's gang. We get a compilation of their heists and goofs which would have been far better if they added that extra episode just for them. making the transition into the gang a lot smoother and making us care for the characters even more. But we can't always get what we want. I'm assuming it was because of the budget restrictions or restriction on how many episodes they are contracted to make. The show ended up winning Anime of the Year, as it should, because it was honestly perfect up to every little detail in my opinion. It opens with a brain dance of a cyberpsycho going into cyberpsychosis, shooting up the police using all of his implants, Sandevistan included. Turns out the brain dance was being played by the one and only David himself, really setting the scene showing how rough Night City truly is, at the same time showing us what kind of person David is. We then get a glimpse into David's life as he's a teen living in poverty with a single mother. His mother Gloria is using every penny she makes, both with her legitimate job and her side hustle of selling used implants she lifts off dead bodies during her shifts as an EMT. She uses all her money to pay for David to be able to attend Arasaka Academy, where most students are children of wealthy individuals. This makes David feel like an outcast. Not only that, but the other teens at this school bully David for being poor. This really sets this fictional world up into truly feeling real, as the problems the protagonist goes through can often be seen in life. The show itself is inserted into the world of Cyberpunk, not just added on top of it. You can see the layers of the story writing in both the show and the game. For example, when David and his mother are caught in a crossfire of a gang attempting to kill some corpo, the gang itself has a fully fleshed out background and story. They go by, and I quote, the Animals. You can actually see their sticker on the car they're in. They're an aggressive street fighting booster gang from West Pacifica that puts emphasis on physical power above all else. They avoid traditional cyberware, so they enhance themselves with melee combat enhancing implants, and by using ultra testosterone, animal supplements, and a steroid-like drug known as the juice, which increases the user's strength and speed. So whenever you see a small detail in the show, it almost always ties into the game's story. Another good example of this is Arasaka itself, which plays a big part in the Cyberpunk universe. It's a worldwide megacorporation dealing in corporate security, banking, and manufacturing. It is one of the most influential megacorporations in the world of Cyberpunk. Arasaka branded weapons and military vehicles are used mainly by police and security firms. Over the years, it has developed a dark reputation as a corporation that is to be feared, and one which covers its tracks using assassins, an army of lawyers, and as well as alleged connection to the Yakuza. Arasaka's interest in David starts when they figure out that he's installed a Sandevistan, but hasn't gone into cyberpsychosis yet. We find out that his resistance against cyberware is much higher than your average Joe, basically on the same level as V, who you play as from the game. Arasaka sees David as an asset he can use, like Adam Smasher, who's more machine than man, the perfect soldier. V from the game also has ties to the conglomerate, as he's tasked with stealing a biochip from them, in the process starting a timer to his death. The show keeps this gritty, dark dystopian feel to it, like the game does, but at the same time staying colourful visually. It's actually showing us a possible future that might be closer than you think. Both the show and the game don't have a good ending. The show ends on possibly one of the worst outcomes, and the game has multiple choices with none of them leading to the main character surviving. But the bad endings ain't so bad. They leave you understanding the harsh reality of Night City. It's not supposed to be a place where you want to live. It's hell on earth in some aspects. But that's what makes this universe stand out so much. Not only is it not apologetic about your feelings, but it's harshly realistic. And I really love the Cyberpunk theme, okay? So sue me. Don't get me started on the original voice acting too. The show was made to be watched in Night City's native language, English, which is quite unusual for an anime. Not only did the voice actors go above and beyond, but there's some voice actors I didn't expect. David, the protagonist, is voiced by Zach Aguilar, who's the voice of the main character in a dubbed version of this very small and underground show called Demon Slayer, and many more characters you might have heard of. This one is later on in the show, and it actually made my jaw drop. Faraday, the main antagonist of the show, who was a calculated corpo fixer, was voiced by someone that we all know. Who would you say voiced a calculated bad guy? Fucking Gus Fring! Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. What the fuck? Or Falco, who we don't see much in the show, but he's actually voiced by the one and only Matthew Mercer, who's the voice behind Cassidy from Overwatch. Like what? There are many more voice actors in the show who you might have seen in other work, but those are the three that really stood out to me. Another aspect of the universe that makes me love it so much is the music. They somehow find this balance of choosing songs which sound just right for a dystopian future. but it sounds good and not goofy unlike some other games do it. I'm not saying every song is a bop, but a lot of them are, and you'll catch yourself bopping your head while driving through Night City. My personal favourites are Who's Ready for Tomorrow by Ratboy, This Fire by Franz Ferdinand, which is actually the intro for the show, Health by Major Crimes, Friday Night Firefight by Alines, and how can I mention the Cyberpunk music without mentioning I Really Want to Stay at Your House by Rosa Walton. I still get flashbacks listening to this song. So in conclusion, this show definitely deserved the title Anime of the Year, as the story writing, animation, music, voice acting, and the universe of Cyberpunk is just perfect. The game, on the other hand, could have been much better on release, but the game in its current state is actually good, and I'm very excited what the new big update will bring to the table. It's pretty cool that they even got Idris Elba in the DLC, so I'm stoked on what they'll cook up. So I guess it's true what people say. There are no good endings in Night City, but they sure are memorable. Thanks for staying around until the end. If you had a good time, hit that like, it helps me a lot. And if you enjoyed this video, why not check out my other videos? And I'll see you in the next one.